Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Timo Parker and today we want to talk about music theory, the very basics, everything you need to know to get started. So let's dive right into it. So when I started out making music, I actually had no idea about music theory, but the more I learned and the more interested in music I got, the more theory I learned, and I found it really helpful to find connections. This way you don't have to remember that much and you can use knowledge to actually get things together. So when we talk about music, we talk about sound. And the easiest form of it is just a melody. That means a single note thing. For example, something like... That's a melody, right? So in this case we have 4 notes that come together and build a melody. So the thing is, in order to build a melody, we need certain distances between notes, because as you can hear, this one here has not the same distance as this one. And when you talk about the distances between 2 notes, we call it in music intervals. And this is where I want to get started. So an interval is the distance between 2 notes. Those 2 notes can be played at the same time or after each other. But it just defines the distance between those 2 notes. So in total there are 12 intervals that we have to know, and I prepared them already here on my little board. Of course this doesn't work. So these are the 12 intervals. You see at the end there are 3 more. I'm gonna get to them in a minute. But these are the 12 intervals that we need to know. I'm also going to include a PDF file for free as a download in the description box below. So you can just look at the material again and refresh if you forgot something. But in order to show you the intervals, I'm actually gonna change the camera angles. So let's have a look from above, because we can really see what's happening on the piano when we play intervals. Before we start looking at the intervals, I think it's very important to know how the notes are called even on the piano. So we do that real quick. As you can see, we have a group of 2 black keys and 3 black keys, and then it repeats and repeats all over the piano. Same thing with the white keys. We have no black key here and no black key here. And this also repeats. So from here to here, it repeats this pattern all over the piano. Let us name the notes, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C again. We're going to learn the scale in just a second. So for now, we're just going to look at the white keys. Just not to get confused, we're going to look at the black ones and name them in a second. But what I want to show you are the intervals. In case you forgot, here are the intervals. And we're going to start with a minor second, major second, and this HS just means half step. So maybe we should start there. What is a half step? A half step just means that you jump from the note where you are at, let's say this one here, to this closest key that is available. In this case, we go from B to C. From C, the half step would not be the white key because there's a black key in between. So this is the half step. You can guess where it's going. Half step is, in this case, the white key, then the black key, the white key. So these are half steps. Simple, right? So now it's the major second, which are 2 half steps. That means we skip 1 half step and go to the next one. Here we skip 1 and we go to the next one. And this is the principle behind all intervals. You just have to count the half steps and then you will get the according interval. And I'm going to show you all the intervals. We have the minor second, the major second, the minor third, the major third, the fourth, or also called the perfect fourth, the tritone, the fifth, the minor sixth, the major sixth. And funny enough, that's the only exception that you don't call this one here a minor seventh. You call it just a 7th, I don't know why. And the next step, major 7th. And just realize this is the same note, just an octave higher. And this is also the name of the interval. It's an octave, so it's the same note. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 half steps. And here the journey starts again. Same principle, minor second, major second, so on and so forth. So there is a little exception. Sometimes when you want to play pop songs, or even especially in jazz you will see it, that you have numbers over the chord. Let's just get this little board here for a second. So what we did now is all those intervals up to the octave, and you see I indicated a little line here because these are a bit special, a bit bonus. Things start to repeat up an octave. But what happens if we keep this note, so this is the octave, and we continue walking away from the octave? So this one here. So that means it's like a major second, but it's an octave higher. It's a different sound, listen. There's just so much more space in between that it just sounds different. And this is also the reason why you give the major second, when you play it an octave higher, a different name, which is the ninth. So you basically just continue counting up. And you do the same with the perfect fourth, or the fourth, which is the 11th. It's a nice sound. You can hear the distance makes a difference. And then we have the 13th, which is in this case an A, and here, and it's just a way to distinguish the distance between the 6th and the 13th. So that's all. Alright, these are intervals. That means it's a combination of two notes that create a sound together, either at the same time, simultaneously, or after each other. So what we do now is we take it a step further. So most of the times in music, when we have a melody going on, we actually have a chord below that accompanies the melody. So for example, the melody I played before, if you remember. So I'm going to play the same melody and we just put a chord underneath. Let's see how that sounds. Aha! All of a sudden the sound gets a bit more. It gets a bit more complex maybe because we have this chord lying underneath. And this is the next step I want to talk with you about, which chords are out there. So there are different chords out there and we're gonna focus today on triads. That means the combination of three notes, and we're just gonna cover the very, very common ones, the very essential ones. Actually, you're gonna get one bonus one just because of the symmetry of the intervals. I'm gonna include it, but we don't really use it that often in, for example, pop music. But let's take a look at it. All right, back at the piano. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna learn the basic chord structures of 4 triads that are very common. And the way you create a chord is actually pretty simple. So let's say we're gonna create a triad, the major triad that I just played, to accompany the melody, root C, and we're gonna put a major third on top. Sounds already familiar. And we're gonna put a minor third on top. And this is our major chord. And this chord formula always stays the same. If you want to play a major chord, it's always gonna be from the root a major third, and then from the major third a minor third up. It's always the same. And that's what I mean when theory can actually help you, because you don't have to remember each note of each chord. You can actually just count it until you memorize them by heart. Alright, so this is our first chord. It's the major chord. And what we can do, and this is already the bonus one just for the sake of simplicity, so we don't have to move that much. So what happens if we use a minor third, and from the minor third we go again a minor third up? Different sound. That's an augmented triad, which you will find quite often in jazz music and in classical music, but in pop music it's not that common. So let's just mention it. 2 major thirds equals an augmented triad. We go back to major third and minor third. So and now it's the other very, very common chord that you probably heard before, which is a minor triad, and all we have to do is put the first interval, the major third, and lower it 1/2 step to a minor third. So what we have now is a minor third on the bottom and a major third on the top. And this chord sounds like this. A very common chord in pop music, and also very important for the next step where we're gonna go after that. Okay, one last chord that we have, which is also not super common in pop music, and you can guess it. The augmented chord is symmetric with 2 major thirds, and the diminished one, which is the next one, is symmetric with 2 minor thirds. So that means minor third on the bottom and minor third on the top. So we have those 4 chords, the augmented, the major, minor, and the diminished chord. And these are the 4 basic chord structures that we need to understand the next things that I'm gonna explain to you. Alright, let's take a little break from chords. We're gonna move on and talk about the scale that every musician should know. And you probably heard of this scale already. I'm talking about the major scale. So let's take a look what a major scale is. So a scale is a run of notes. In a major scale, it's for example 7 notes. We're gonna look at them in just a second, but we also have other scales that just have 5 notes. Some even have 8 notes. It really depends, but there are a lot of different scales out there, and the most basic one is the major scale, and we're gonna look at it right now. I'm gonna play it once and then we take a look what a major scale actually is. So we start in C. Gonna call out the notes once. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. And that's the C major scale in 1 octave. So the major scale, and that's just something you have to learn, that you have to remember. So in the C major scale we have a major second, a major third, a fourth, a fifth, a major sixth, a major seventh, and then the octave, and then it repeats again. So that means over 2 octaves. So this is the C major scale. And when you look at the piano and we look at the white keys, we see that it's actually always whole steps. And there are 2 exceptions that we have to look at. That means between the 3rd and the 4th and the 7th and the octave. So these are the 2 exceptions where we actually not go a whole step but a half step. And that's the characteristic of the major scale. So the trick is with scales that you mostly just have to remember where the half steps are, because they're just 2. There are other tonalities where it's a bit different, but we stick to major for today. And just remember between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8 we have a half step, which makes it sound like a major scale. There's another cool thing that you can do with a major scale. So if you just use the white keys, you can start building triads, and that's called a diatonic system. So we start from the root, we take a triad, and we just keep the same distance with the chords and see what happens. Let's take a look at it. So if I would play a C major scale and instead of just a melody I play chords, for example C major, C, E, G, and the distance visually it's always going to be the same. We have 1 white note in between, so we play 1 note, we leave 1 white note out, we play 1 note, we leave 1 white note out, and we play another note. So if I keep that structure and play it through the C major scale, that means so when we play those chords through the C major scale, we get 7 of them. So we're just using notes from C major. And let's just name them quickly. So we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, B diminished, and C major. And some people also talk about them in degrees. So C is the 1st degree, D is the 2nd, E is the 3rd, F the 4th, 5th degree is the G, 6th degree A, 7th degree, and the octave. So if you understand the system behind the C major scale and know where the half notes are and which chords you can build, you can actually do a lot. And to be honest, most of today's pop music is based on 1 key on this system. So everything you need to know is actually right here in 1 key. But wait a second, there are different keys, right? Let's talk about that now. So music would be very boring if we would play it always in 1 key, in the same key, and we would never change anything. So there's a system behind music, and now the black keys come in handy, where we can change keys. That means, I told you before that we can play a C major scale not only from C, but we can also start from different other notes. So before we play some major scales in different keys, let's name the black keys for now, real quick, and then we play 1 or 2 major scales in a different key. We skipped the black keys before, and they actually have double names depending from which key you are coming from. Just bear with me for a second and just know that there are 2 names for each black key. This one could be a C sharp or a D flat. This could be a D sharp or an E flat, F sharp or G flat, G sharp or A flat, A sharp or B flat. And these are the black notes. So now I'm going to explain to you real quick why they have 2 names. Depending on which scale you are coming from, they have different names, but they sound the same. So if I say C sharp or D flat, it's this note, always. It's not going to change. It just has 2 names. And it depends on if it's coming from C, and you have seen maybe the sign that looks like a hashtag in music. I'm gonna show it to you in just a second. And that means C sharp. So we go 1/2 note up, and this is what the hashtag or this sharp sign represents. Same goes for the D. If there's the letter B in front of the note or after the letter D, it means you go in 1/2 step down. So we're going to play a D major scale, right? So in order to have the 1/2 step between the 3rd and the 4th note and the 7th and the octave, we actually have to start to incorporate black keys. So check this out. We play D to E. Now we need a whole step and not a 1/2 step. That means we're not going to play this F here. We're going to raise it and go to F sharp. So when we are in the key of D, we want to raise notes to get the right note that we need. So it's D, E, F sharp. So now we need a 1/2 step, convenient, it's just the G. Whole step, and we need another whole step because the 1/2 step is just between the 7th and the octave. This is not the note we are looking for, we need it a 1/2 step higher. Aha, here we go, and we are back home. That means D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So let's go to the other side where we actually have to flatten a note to play a major scale, and let's do that in the key of F. So we're going to have the 1/2 step between the 3rd and the 4th and the 7th and the octave, just to remember. So we play F, we need a whole step, F, G, A. So far so good, but now we need a 1/2 step, which means the black key. And that's why we have to flatten this B to get a B flat in order to have this 1/2 step in the F major scale. That means nice. In the key of F major, we just need 1 note to be altered, which is the B to B flat in order to have the 1/2 note between the 3 and the 4. And between the 7th and the octave, we already have a 1/2 step because there's no black key in between. So whenever you change a note from a white key to a black key, that's considered an alteration. It doesn't matter if you sharp the note or flatten it, it's just an alteration, it's just a term of it. And this is why systems come in handy, because now you know the 1/2 step always has to be between 3 and 4 and 7 and 8. So knowing that, you can start from any key on the piano or on a different instrument, any of the 12 keys that we have in the tonic system, and play a major scale. Pretty cool. So there's actually a little trick on how to remember different keys and also how many alterations they have. And this system is called the circle of fifths. I have it here. I'm also going to put it down in the PDF. So it's a circle where we go in fifths. So if we look at the notes here, from C to G is a fifth, from G to D is a fifth, D to A to E to B, E to F sharp or G flat to D flat to A, E flat to B flat, F to C. These are all fifths, and that's why it's a circle of fifths. Makes sense, right? So the cool thing is, if you just go a fifth away, you see I put those signs that I was talking about. So this is the sharp sign, this is the flat sign. So if you go in the circle of fifths, there's actually always just one alteration added to each key. So when we go from the key from C to G, we just need one more alteration. But in G, the alteration would be that we go from F to an F sharp to have the half step between the 7th and the 8th. And this system just works, and it's very easy because it's just one alteration that changes. So if you're starting out and you want to learn major scales, I would highly recommend start with C because there are no alterations. It's the simplest key that you can probably play. For some instruments it's different, like for reeds and for brass instruments. So if you're starting out and you want to learn the major scales, just start with C or with the easiest scale on your instrument and just move away always just one step. For example, play C, F and G and just learn those 3 keys. And then if you're comfortable, you can add the B flat and the D. And at some point you're through the whole circle of fifth and you know all the major scales that are available. So this is the tonic system. We have C major scales, we have intervals, we talked about chords. We covered a lot of ground today. So if you feel a bit overwhelmed, that's totally fine. It's a lot of information, but I just wanted to have it all in one video so you don't have to skip around and look for everything. Everything I talked about is attached in a PDF file down below in the description box. It's a free download, so just head over, get your PDF, and this sheet can really help you learning all this stuff and memorizing it. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned some new stuff today and I appreciate you watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!